Galaxias Chapter 11 is out, and this was another great chapter. We got some really cool action sequences. We got more answers to why Chalk is in this village, some extra lore, as well as meeting back up with Reno and finally realizing what the heck happened with him in the village. And this was just a really fun and quick chapter. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now that out of the way, let's jump right into things. So chapter 11 of Galaxias, titled NERAID vs. Chalk, Part 2, with Geo on the cover, being adorable and just enjoying her adventure. Now then, on to the actual meat of the chapter. We continue from last week, where NERAID punched a hole into the ground as now him and Chalk are falling through the ground. Chalk launches 3 stone spears right towards NERAID, as he says he may have destroyed our footing, but let's see if he can try dodging in midair. And as these lances are coming towards him, NERAID uses his tail to adjust himself midair so that he can dodge these attacks. As Chalk's just incredibly confused, he changed his stance using his tail. What an odd feeling. His conduct does not suggest intelligence. It's clear he's not the type to think before he acts, which, yeah, very true, as we've seen from everything NERAID has done in the entire series. He wears his heart in his sleeves and just doesn't really think things through and just acts on pure impulse. He goes on to recount what happened last chapter with NERAID just using his tail in an interesting way that he's never seen before, stating, but on the other hand, he makes absolutely no wasted movements during battle. I've buried countless men, and he saw my surefire attacks perfectly. No, wait, that's not what concerns me. This man's strength lacks depth. The accumulation of experience one would expect from someone so strong is entirely absent. I like this really cool visualization of just NERAID's silhouette of being completely whited out, like he's just an empty shell, like we've kind of assumed since he has no memories and no past experiences, and that one panel just closing in seemingly on his eye being incredibly menacing and just foreboding. As we get an image of a beach with footprints, as Chalk says, it's as if strength itself took a human form and suddenly appeared in the world one day. Now this is interesting piece of dialogue and could potentially confirm what happened with the previous chapter 2 chapters ago, with Yerkes essentially stating that NERAID is like the kingdom's just ghost, and also Party Gems, who comments on previous videos, maybe fully confirming that he might be an artificial dragonfolk or some like some dragon agent from the past, soldier from the past that got reawakened. That's incredibly interesting, but there could be more depth to it, and I like that there's more seeding for the mystery of NERAID and what the hell he is. This is what helps make this series a lot more interesting than just it being a plain old adventure with some cool action sequences, and the mystery just keeps getting deeper. But Chalk cuts off his inner thoughts and speculations by just calling NERAID somebody that creeps him out. As NERAID says, hey, come on, you don't gotta be mean about it. But instead, NERAID realizes that they're about to hit the ground. And all this just happened while they were in midair. I had to double check this page because I thought water erupted from the wall, but then I remembered, oh yeah, wait, they're falling from a very absurd height. So yeah, he just fell into the ground. NERAID crashes and then gets back up. But we then see an image of a cave with a bunch of different crystal figures and this bizarre crystal-looking star in the center of it, as NERAID's wondering what this is. Chalk gets up, stating these are religious ruins known as the 7 Stars Caves. 1,000 years ago, the first Dragon King, Atlas Calaxarius, I butchered that pronunciation, ordered it to be built, and now it will be my castle. Now this is being 100% explained to us in a pretty good way why Chalk chose this town and has been having people dig in this cave. As he stands in front of this crystal structure, he states, I am to be the strongest Dragon Knight in this kingdom. One of the kingdom's strongest fighters directly serving the Dragon King, the Royal Zodiacs. I shall acquire that title. So everything he's been doing with this town, not just getting them under his foot and trying to be the king of the town, but he wants to become one of the Royal Zodiacs, the strongest Dragon Knight serving the Dragon King himself. Obviously, the current Dragon King is, dead, presumably, but it's nice getting some motivation for Chalk, as he wanted to use this place to build his empire and eventually become the strongest so that he can become part of the Royal Zodiac. NERAID states, look, I don't really care about that, and I don't get why you'd live in a hole after taking over a whole town. I hate that. Chalk states, it's not something logical. Invading the sacred space of the king the townsfolk worship, that in and of itself has meaning. It's not logical, but it has its own logic. Kind of bit of a contradictory thing, more so going by, like, there's a method to the madness of what he's doing right now. As he gets kind of crazy, stating, gazing upon the rabble as they nobly endure the absurd is what I love most of all. As NERAID just calls the man a weirdo. As that's the last of this interaction that we get, as there isn't too much of the fight to continue off with this chapter. Now, obviously, Chalk has a bit of a god complex, seemingly. He just likes watching people suffer and he wants to rule over them like the superior person that he believes himself to be. With this cave, where people worship the first Dragon King, it's a religious site. That's why he wanted Schmidt's help and then ended up overtaking the place. So, things are coming together and it does make sense. We get some nice lore over what this place is. This crystalline area just looks so beautiful, so serene, that I would just stare at it for a long time. And Chalk proclaiming that he's going to be one of the Royal Zodiac, the strongest Dragon Knights, adds a bit more credibility to why he has so much stock in wanting to not just be stronger, but to have his own territory and to do what he's doing right now for his own motivations and for what we've seen in his character. It makes sense. But yeah, pretty interesting to finally get an answer to that. But with this interaction ended, we then cut to outside the village, back with Reno, as Geo appears as she ran 4 miles to see him, as she is utterly exhausting and breathing heavily like she is about to die. I love these comedic panels so much. The mangaka just knows what to do to make you laugh, I swear. After chugging a bottle of water, Geo then explains that NERAID took out Bronze rather effortlessly, as well as the fact that after that, he just flew off by grabbing onto Bronze as he seems to be heading towards the boss right now. And Reno stating, you're being awfully nonchalant about this, as, well, Geo has every right to be. As she states, well, he already reshaped the topography of my entire hometown, so I'm not exactly too worried about him. And based off of everything she has seen NERAID do, she is fairly confident in his strength and for him to deal with Chalk. And yeah, I would have her nonchalant attitude to him going off to fight the literal final boss for this arc in this instance, so yeah. But Reno just says, I see, as this catches Geo's attention. As states, but they really were treating the townsfolk cruelly. Geo states, they told us that you ran away. Is that true? But Reno actually confirms it, yeah. It's true, at least from the townsfolk's perspective. As we get a bit of a flashback, as he talks about Schmidt, the Mujina dragon, saying that his ability is the ability to distort others' senses. And so the day when he came, Reno was out of town at this instance, so Chalk and Schmidt showed up. And so Schmidt used his ability to turn into Reno, losing to Chalk on purpose and thus running away, giving the townsfolk a reason to hate Reno. And thus Chalk took over the town shortly after that, with the results being plain to see. Reno became hated without even getting a chance to fight. And so he comes to the conclusion that it was most likely Schmidt's idea to do all this while he was away so that they can take over without much of a fight. And after hearing this, Geo realizes that that little girl that they saw in town was most likely Schmidt's doing, hiding in plain sight. And that's why the people don't know about Schmidt, and if his ability became known, it would essentially ruin their whole plan that they're doing at this instance. Reno tells Geo that it looks like she had a rough time, but don't blame the townsfolk or harbor any ill will to them. He's the one who she should hate. His family protected the town for generations, but he failed all of them. Geo asks him if he's okay with all this for things to stay the same. Reno says that he can't even get near the town, especially not after everything that's happened this time. Geo states that that's just something they forced on him. He doesn't need to listen to them. Asking, are you really that scared of them? As Reno just says, yeah, I am. After the town was stolen, I only saw them once. I thought I might be able to steal it back depending on my opponent. But in that instance, he felt the sheer power that Chalk and even Bronze had, stating that they were on a whole other level. It was clear as day that fighting them would have him killed. He would die if he fought them. There's nothing that I can do now. So I'll just scrape by living out here, nursing my regrets. A man with no power or resolve is a miserable thing. So He literally not only was out of town when everything took place, but when he went back to try and take the town back, he realized just how strong his opponents were, and he just scurried away with his tail between his legs, realizing that it was most likely a wasted effort in that he wouldn't be able to win anyway. He is a coward, but he's also, to an extent, realizes his limitations, and he could tell that Chalk and Bronze were that much more powerful than he was. So I can see where he's coming from. But Geo then gives him a really great motivational speech. Standing tall, she tells him, "When you heard that sludge guy had been defeated, you looked frustrated." As this catches his attention, she realizes this brief instances of emotions from other people. She states, "It doesn't matter if you can do it or not. What do you want to do?" As Reno tries to say out loud that most likely he wants to go and take his town back, but he says, "I can't," after stopping himself. He says, "I can't get his face out of my head. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop shaking. I just can't move past this." As he thinks back to his first interaction with Chalk, as Chalk just stating, "I'm in a good mood, so I'll let you leave the town right now. The town's mine, but don't ever come back." But as he's recounting this, stating that he can't move past this, Geo grabs him and throws him on her back to try and carry him to town. As she says, "Man, you're heavy. It'll be fine if you don't set foot in the town, so this is okay, right?" Giving kind of some bizarre reasonings to try and just convince him to move forward. She then gives him a brief explanation of her life thus far. She lived a whole life out in the sticks and dreamed of adventuring through the outside world, but my father wouldn't allow it. He said adventurers were good-for-nothings who neglected those around them for the sake of their own desires. And now she gets why he felt that way, and he raised a child that wasn't even his own for all these years all by himself. And she's sure that he had lots of things he really wanted to do, but put those off in order to raise her. States, "But even so, he still trusted me in the end and sent me off on my way, and that's why I'm standing here right now. I won't give up on anything in my adventure. I want this journey to be something my dad can be proud of. I won't leave anyone behind." And I just love how she literally just spoke like a true adventurer, going for everything, but also wanting to live a life that her father can be proud of. Obviously, she's not really talking about Yuri. She's talking about Hallie, her adoptive father, obviously, but a little bit of Yuri Holst is probably in there as well. But still, she's just stating, look, do what you want to do. Don't live your life with regrets. You've done all this stuff. These things have happened, but I know how it's like to essentially have some regrets, and I know someone who put everything on the back burner aside despite their own ideals and things that they wanted to do to give me a life, and eventually had me go off on my own adventure and trusted me to do so. So I'm going to keep living no matter what. I'll live my dream. I like that. It's a really nice speech, and really showcases the strength of her character. Reno states that she's a pretty selfish girl, and essentially says, "Now then, it's a long way from here, so have you drunk enough water?" As she just yells at him, stating, "You can walk on your own right now, can't you?" I like how she literally just did this whole grand gesture in order to motivate him, and Reno is just kind of, teasing her about it, telling him to just get off and walk on your own now. But the chapter then ends off back with Chalk and NERAID, as a bunch of stone pillars have erected around Chalk as he's staring down NERAID, who is staring back at him on the ground, ready to keep fighting. Ending the chapter. I had a lot more to talk about this week, and I like how we got full-on answers to what happened with Chalk and taking over the village, Schmidt's involvement, what happened with Reno, Geo having a really nice motivational speech and moment for Reno to get off his ass and do what he wants to do to protect his town, and Chalk essentially giving us more information based on his experiences in fighting, and now that he's found NERAID, potentially feeding the theories that he's some sort of artificial dragonfolk, some government weapon, and feeding into what Yerk said about him being the ghost of the kingdom's past. So, a lot of things did happen in this chapter. We also know what Chalk came to the town for, and his motivations, and where they're fighting right now, the environment they're fighting in now, is just incredibly cool looking, and Chalk has an insane advantage, even more so than before. So I'm very looking forward to what happens next. And hopefully Reno does something to actually prove himself useful in a fight and redeem his character to the rest of the townsfolk. And maybe Geo will have some role to play in this fight concluding, hopefully. But yeah, really good chapter. I enjoyed myself and I cannot wait for more. What did you guys think? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.
So it was like it's no eyes.